new song today. It's pretty simple, but I'm going to start with the chorus. I'm going to sing the chorus one time and then go in with the verses so you'll know what the chorus sounds like. Like sinking sand, I've nothing to cling to but your sweet hand. No clear emotions keeping me safe at night. Only your presence, like a candlelight. And after everything I've had, after everything I've lost, Lord, I know this much is true. I'm still drawn to you. Pour out my sorrows like a precious oil. And I kiss your feet, Lord, with a holy joy. My tears an offering of my highest praise. Your eyes say welcome, and I receive your gaze. And after everything I've had, and after everything I've lost, Lord, I know this much is true. I'm still drawn to you. After everything I've had, and after everything I've lost, Lord, I know this much is true. I'm still drawn to you. After everything's been said, after everything love costs, Lord, I know this much is true. I'm still drawn to you. Lord, I know this much is true. I'm still drawn to you. God, many of us have been on really difficult faith journeys. We've been told we're wrong, or our theology is bad, or it's wrong to question. But there's something about your presence that feels healing and comforting that draws us in. So I thank you for this community where we can have the freedom to experience your presence in whatever way we need to without worrying about doing it wrong. Would you help us to be open to whatever we might need to learn today? Amen.
Thank you, Mary and Lucy. That was beautiful. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sean. Welcome to Life Church. We're really glad that you're able to join us this morning. Life Church strives to be a safe place to explore faith. So if you're here this morning and God and church is something that grounds you and gives you life and hope, then you're welcome. We're really excited that you're here. But maybe you're here with some uncertainties or doubts, or you're not even sure why you're here this morning. You're also welcome. No matter what has brought you here this morning, we're really glad that you're able to join us. If you can, open up the Life Church app. There's a digital connection card in there. And whether you're joining us online or in person, if you could just fill that out, that would be really helpful. That way we can know how we can serve you better. And it's also a great place to leave questions or comments, or if you'd like to find out how you can serve here and volunteer. That's all in the Life Church app. You can get the Life Church app anywhere you get apps. Just search for Life Church Lancaster. Thank you to those of you who give financially here at Life Church. You are the reason that we can do all the wonderful things that we can do here. So thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to give, you can do that on the app. There's also some giving boxes at the back of the sanctuary. So thank you all very much for supporting Life Church. So this morning, we have the privilege of learning via video from contemplative teacher Phileena Hertz. Phileena spent much of the first half of her life in social justice work among the world's poor. For nearly 20 years, she served in more than 70 countries, building community among victims of human trafficking, survivors of HIV and AIDS, abandoned children, child soldiers, and war brides. Her work among the world's most vulnerable people shaped and prepared Phileena for her life's work as a spiritual director. As an author, spiritual director, yoga instructor, public speaker, and retreat guide, Phileena is passionate about spirituality and making the world a better place. Among her many accomplishments, she was named in Outreach magazine's list of 30 emerging influencers reshaping leadership. And Phileena believes that contemplative spirituality is crucial to authentic, creative, liberating social change. This morning on the video, she'll be talking about tapping into the innermost living waters. If you remember when Aaron Nyquist joined us a little while ago, that was the same topic that he talked about, stepping into the current of the Spirit of God. So this is a similar practice. We've been talking the last few weeks about finding guides, good guides, who can lead us on our spiritual journeys, leaving behind ideas and theologies that leave bad fruit. This work of finding guides and following takes energy and attention. Contemplative practices enable us to connect to God, who is the source of eternal waters that quench our thirst and energize us. God provides the water that gives us eternal and abundant life. So let's listen. I hope you enjoy the video.
It seems to me that a lot of us are looking for something more, and what was once satisfying and fulfilling in local church and Sunday services, for example, now many people are finding those experiences wanting. And unfortunately, I think a lot of spirituality out there is a bit watered down and made for easy consumption for the masses. And what might be easily consumed by one, for someone else is like, we've been chewing on that a long time, and I'd rather spit that out. I need something of more substance. And I think about the Apostle Paul, how he would teach, or in some of his writings, he referenced like giving milk versus solid food. And I think a lot of folks in church are experiencing an awful lot of milk and not enough solid food. So, for example, we're facing times now that are just unmatched in terms of our political divisions, our social divisions, our religious divisions. How do we deal with that? How do we live in a pluralist society in a way that we are really living out the values of Jesus for mercy and grace and love and forgiveness? Love of our enemies, for example, is a huge message that we need today in our troubled times. But how do we really live in that kind of love? I think for a lot of us, we're struggling to find those depths within us that provide that kind of resource for the times that we're living in. And so contemplative spirituality really assumes depth. It starts from the deep waters. And I think many of us are struggling to step into those deep waters, be guided in those waters, and find a way to move in those waters in a way that is nourishing for ourselves and the people around us. Contemplative spirituality really starts there in the depths of presence and presence of mind, presence of being, where we learn lessons in perception and how to see. Contemplation actually comes from those root words meaning to see, to observe, and so learning how to see clearly. And this goes back to principles of waking up. And so contemplative spirituality helps us wake up, begin to see, develop these capacities for presence of mind and presence of being that then opens us up into a rootedness in personhood, so beyond personality, into the real essence of who we are. So in my own life, beginning to step into the deep waters of contemplative spirituality, this deep well, I began to wake up to this sense of presence, of learning to be with what is, really developing a capacity to be with what is through spiritual practice. Because contemplative practice, one of the greatest gifts of contemplative practice is really helping me to be. And so resisting wanting to run or wanting to hide or wanting to avoid, instead I have to sit in the practice, which over time develops this capacity to be and to develop this presence of being. And as I would give myself to spiritual practice in that way, then these skills were developing in me over time to be more in the present moment. And what that did then was allow me to really open my eyes to what is and have that perception of what's going on in my world. And so what that meant very personally for me in the beginning was having the perception to see that I was acting out of some of my compulsions to be what other people wanted me to be. And I had to face that and look seriously at that and realize the ways in which I was interacting with my partner and my parents and my friends and my coworkers from a place of really not knowing if I'm loved. And to face that fear of this deep place in me that doubted my lovability wasn't easy to look at, but it was absolutely necessary to help me recognize that kind of illusion and lie that I was living in and how that was impacting and affecting the way in which I was interacting with the people in my life and the decisions that I was making around the kind of work I was doing and how I was doing that work. And so to have that perception around my own unconscious motivations and unconscious drives, and how that was leading me to really seek the love and approval and affection of other people, exposed how unfree I really was. To live from my essence in terms of who I really am and what I'm called to, who I'm called to be, and to instead settling for this false sense of self that doubted that I was really loved. And as time went on, moving deeper in those waters, this perception that not only am I loved, but I am the source of love, because I swim in the waters of love. It's like being in the womb of God. There is no separation. I'm swimming in that amniotic fluid of the love of God. And to be that connected, to realize that kind of union that just is, and to wake up from the illusion of separateness, then freed me to be able to give of myself truly from a place of selflessness, where I'm not doing and giving and relating in a way to get, but I'm just moving in the flow of love. This is what's possible when we find courage really to step into the deep waters of contemplative spirituality. So the thing about contemplative spirituality is that we really don't come to it with great appreciation until we realize how desperately we need it. And so, like my teacher Thomas Keating says, there are two fundamental questions in the spiritual journey. In the beginning, at the point of conversion, we ask, what can I do for God? As we progress on the spiritual journey, the question becomes, what can God do for me? Now, initially, one might react to that question, like, that's too selfish, like, what? No, like, it's all about what I can do for God. But if you look at the teachings of Jesus in the Gospels, the people who really were able to receive Jesus were those who knew how desperately they needed him, his touch, his healing, his affirmation, his support, to be to find themselves in a place of belonging when they were struggling to realize that they, this is not working. So like what we see is in the Gospels of Jesus, that it was the people who recognized how much they had need who were able to receive what Jesus had. And so this is what we're getting at when we talk about asking the question, what can God do for me? Realizing that actually I'm in need. And it's those of us who presume to have all the answers, who presume to be the source of help and healing to everyone else, who often are really asleep and unaware of their own need. And so when we begin to ask the question, what can God do for me? We're ready really to step into the deeper well, the deeper waters of contemplative spirituality. And so it's true that as we go through life's journey, when we experience enough of life and enough of suffering, the way of life will get us there in terms of getting us to the point of recognizing our need for God. But if we could wise up, wake up a little earlier, and give ourselves to contemplative practice by starting from that place of recognizing I'm actually in need of God right here, right now, before I make 1,000,001 mistakes and screw up my life and the people around me. Contemplative spirituality offers that kind of insight and lifeline to our essence, our truest identity. Like I see in my life experience two different approaches to life. There is the person who, for whatever reason, wakes up to her limitations, her needs, her condition, and sets her way on the contemplative path. And maybe that kind of commitment and practice keeps her from making stupid mistakes in life out of the false self, because there's an awareness, an awakeness to that keeps her like accountable and responsible to her life and her life decisions. And then there's the other person who really struggles to give herself to contemplative practice, and instead continues to kind of live life a little bit asleep, act out of her false self, make poor choices that impact her life and those around her, and that path also does the work of waking up and liberation and transformation. So it's not as if one path is holier than the other, because I think God is in all of it. It's just that one path will cause less harm than the other. And I want to be about causing as little harm as possible, to the people in my life and the planet that I live on and in, So the contemplative path really offers a way to tread lightly on this planet, but with great impact for good. And so, if people want to live their life with meaning and real impact for good in the world, then contemplative practice is critical to that. And so what does that mean? Because it's like we're just going through our life, we're just trying to get by, we're just keeping up with our responsibilities, taking care of our family as best as we can, taking care of our friends. And maybe if there's any time or energy left over, then we try and be a good neighbor, but then we don't know how to be a good neighbor. These times are so challenging. And so what does a contemplative practice have to do with that? And I think some people look at, this kind of withdrawal into interior solitude, silence, and stillness, or an embodied practice like yoga to be sort of a waste of time. What good is that? But what we see in the lives of the mystics and what I've experienced in my own life is that those moments of just, even if it's just like a 20-minute sit on a daily basis, or if it's getting away for a weekend retreat, or sometimes going away for a longer, extended amount of interior solitude, silence, and stillness through a longer retreat, what's happening in that intention to withdraw and from daily life, our activities and our busyness, and to be present, is that over time, essentially we are opening to this mysterious inner work of God who can do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. I think this is really the critical piece, is that once we wake up realizing that I actually can't do this life on my own, like I actually screw things up a lot, I hurt the people around me, or I'm just struggling to be myself. It's so hard. I've got all this mental chatter. I'm constantly filtering life through my ego. I'm constantly getting in my way. When we realize that, and we open to a contemplative practice, what we're doing and what we're saying with our body and with our mind and with our heart and our intention is that I need God to do for me what I cannot do for myself. This way of life isn't easy. It's like I'm struggling to live life in the way that I know I'm really made to live in my bones, in my blood. I'm made for more. I've got divine DNA, but how do I realize that? Sit down in a contemplative practice, and over time, this work is done interiorly for us to free us from the false self and move us more into the true self, where we're living with greater access to that divine nature that is in us. Apostle Paul writes about that divine nature. It's in us. We just have to wake up to it. And this is what contemplative practice does, so that once we're waking up to it, then as we're interacting with our friends, with our family, with our coworkers, with our neighbors, we are more often dialed in to those spiritual resources that before we found so hard to access and so much effort, or in a lot of cases we are living hypocrites because we're not accessing those resources. Contemplative practice gives us access to that more often, so that in our daily life we're just more in the flow.
What are some of those things that you get access to?
Yeah, things like really incredible patience. And patience with people who are making me angry or not doing what I want them to do or not giving to me in the ways that I want them to give. Patience with people.
Patience grow.
Say again?
What does patience grow?
Yeah, so then patience grows. Oh, man. In my life, patience has grown great compassion. Compassion for where people are at. Compassion for the fact that, it's just hard to be human, It's just hard to be human, and we're all just doing our best. So patience and kindness and compassion and mercy when I've been hurt. Getting to the place where I can identify really with Jesus. That, I think about Jesus during his crucifixion, looking out on the crowds and just praying, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. To have that kind of perception. What a better world it would be if more of us had that kind of perception, where we were meeting hate with love and violence with compassion. Can you imagine? These are what the greatest teachers and luminaries teach us and show us, right? And we have the potential to be like that.
We can't nurture compassion on the run.
Anything's possible, but it's a lot harder to access it on the run. But see, if we've been practicing, showing up, being present, opening to the God who will do for us what we cannot do for ourselves, then we are more connected in our daily life on the run to those resources. I really believe this is what Jesus was doing when I was just reading the gospel today where Jesus got up at dawn and retreated to a solitary place. I think that's what Jesus was doing when Jesus was recognizing his own need to be connected, because there's so much in our life that threatens that awareness and that awareness of our identity as the beloved of God. And so we see in Jesus' example that he valued that kind of withdrawal from the crowds and prayer, private prayer on his own, in solitude like that. If he was able to see the need and the value for that and really benefited from it, my goodness, who am I to think I don't need it?
How did Jesus benefit from it?
Oh, man. Living waters flowed through that guy, right? Where he had such precise perception, where he knew what the people needed, and he was able to let those resources flow through him for whether it was physical healing or social healing, or even just courage to give courage to the people to be who they are in the face of a great threat to their existence, really. There's this posture that we take in life that really seems to be rooted in a sense in which, God doesn't have our back, that it's really up to us, and that kind of unconscious anxiety rooted in really a fear of God, not in the kind of righteous fear of God way that we might have grown up hearing in Scripture, but a terrifying fear of God, that God actually doesn't really like me too much and I have to do everything that I can to appease God. That kind of unconscious or conscious way of relating to God impacts the way in which we live, so that many of us are kind of harried and hurried and scurrying about through life from a very anxious place. If we could just stop running, stop hiding, stop doing for moments and learn to be, we would wake up to a God who loves us with an infinite love and realize that nothing can separate us from that love. And if we can then live from that rooted place of safety and security and not having to be afraid, then we can move through life with all of its challenges and all of its concerns from a place of fundamentally knowing that everything's going to be okay. Even if things don't seem okay right now, we're rooted in a reality that tells us, no, it's okay. It's okay. Even as awful as this might seem right now, it's really okay. And from that kind of peace and groundedness in the presence of a real and living God who is love, then we can respond to life from a much more peaceful place, a grace-filled place. It is hard to talk about. It just seems so ethereal or like not within reach, something we can't grasp. But the more we tend to this mysterious quality of life, we realize this is more real than this is real. You know? But it takes new eyes, you know, to see that. I mean, it's more real than this because it's everlasting. It is eternal. It is a current, a climate, an energy of life that lives beyond the material. Lives in the material, but beyond the material. It's not dependent on the material.
We're going to sing one more song together. So if you are willing and able, would you stand and sing with us?
Tear down the walls I built, every wall I built, every wall I built up. 'Cause you deserve every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart. Lord, I am trusting that you are a faithful Father, and all that you have, it is good. You're a generous giver, your love's like no other. Won't you come and break through to me over and over and over again? I am bringing my heart to you with open hands. Closer and closer, you're drawing me in as the depths of my heart lay before you again. So come and tear down the walls I built, every wall I built, every wall I built up. 'Cause you deserve every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart. Come and tear down the walls I built, every wall I built, every wall I built up. 'Cause you deserve every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart. Lord, I am trusting that you are a faithful Father, and all that you have, it is good. You're a generous giver, your love's like no other. Won't you come and break through to me over and over and over again? I am bringing my heart to you with open hands. Closer and closer, you're drawing me in as the depths of my heart lay before you again. Over and over and over again, I am bringing my heart to you with open hands. Closer and closer, you're drawing me in as the depths of my heart So come and tear down the walls I built up, every wall I built up, every wall I built up. 'Cause you deserve every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart. So come and tear down the walls I built up, every wall I built up, every wall I built up. 'Cause you deserve every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart, every piece of my heart.
What a beautiful message. I don't know about you guys, but I could use a little more patience, I think, in my life and other fruits of the Spirit. Maybe you heard the message this morning and you thought, that sounds amazing. I don't even know where to begin. Where do I start? And if that's you, I would really encourage you this week, every day, take 5 minutes. 5 minutes, that's it. And just sit in silence. And if you do this, once you sit in silence, as Father Richard Rohr calls it, your monkey brain is going to start climbing the walls and swinging on the chandeliers and reminding you of all the things you have to worry about. So that's why when you go into this silence, you want to take a verse or a phrase with you. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. That's a great example. Or something that means something to you. Take that into that 5 minutes. Sit quietly. When your monkey brain starts jumping around, let that verse bring you back to the center. 5 minutes. I challenge you with that this week. It makes a huge difference. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a great week.